Hello students, this video will go over step number 3 in the process of creating your still life. If you have not created a thumbnail sketch, please stop this video, go back and check out the assignment for thumbnail sketching, because this video will assume that you already have completed your thumbnail sketch. The goal for this today is to talk about how to enlarge and revise your thumbnail sketch to show depth and volume. In class, we talked about some ways to show depth. The key thing about depth is showing distance between front, middle, and back of your artwork. And you can do that using 4 key ways. The first way is by showing overlap. So you draw objects in front of or popping out from behind others. The other way is shading. And then before that, even like thinking about just where you're placing your objects is super important. And then also where you draw either a table line or a desk line or whatever you want to do. So the key thing about placement, you want to draw closer objects towards the bottom third of your paper. You don't want to put the foreground elements of your still life up at the top, because then you're going to run out of room. Once you have those front objects set in the bottom third of your paper, then you can worry about popping out or intersecting or overlapping those shapes in the background. So as I look at these examples, the key thing to note is always that there's the front element or the foreground object is towards the bottom half of the paper. Usually it's not smack dab in the middle, it's like a little tucked off to one side so that there's room to kind of balance it out in the background. The second way to create depth is by shading. So the key thing here is that there's little bits of shadow that are behind objects that overlap. So anywhere there are 2 edges that overlap, or 2 surfaces or 2 objects that overlap, there's always going to be a little bit of extra shading in those little nooks and crannies next to or between. Even here where it's kind of like 2 very light surfaces, there's still a little bit of shading. So with that, I feel like I want to kind of get into how to enlarge your object based upon your thumbnail sketches and based upon the photos that you found in class. Today I was looking at my sketches and I felt like I liked this arrangement the best. For one, each object is kind of, I know it's asymmetrical, it's a little off center, but each object is drawn to scale. I know that the tennis ball is smaller than the shoebox, which is shorter than the shoe bottle, or the water bottle, sorry. But this one, like, I feel like this is like 2 separate still lifes, right? You've got a still life on the left and you've got a still life on the right. So for me personally, I want to pick an arrangement of just 3 objects where they're all together. So with that, let me open up my camera and just focus on how to enlarge. All right, so I moved the picture so I could actually get a better view of all 4 objects. The key thing about drawing and enlarging to show overlap and depth, even if you didn't have this in your thumbnail sketches, you can start to bring your objects slightly closer together. But the first thing when I'm focusing on drawing, there's a couple of rules to just pay attention to. The first one, you always want to focus on the outside before the inside. And then you always want to focus on light lines before dark lines. This way, if you make a mistake, you can always go back and revise. Because for the sake of this video, I'm going to press a little bit harder than I normally would, just so you can see the lines. But when I'm doing this drawing, I know that I want my tennis ball here, I want my box in the middle, and I want my water bottle over here. So I'm going to start in the front by kind of lightly drawing my lines to show the tennis ball. Now again, the foreground element, the front element, you want to be towards the bottom half of your paper. And again, like I said, I'm going to press a little bit harder. The thing I've seen a lot of students do is they try to make their lines perfect on one go. If you notice the type of lines that I'm doing, I use very sketchy lines. Now I know that my box is in the middle and it overlaps my ball. One way to draw overlap is to literally just draw it as if the ball is not there at all. Now again, remember, I'm pressing lightly, but I'm making mine a little bit darker than I normally would just so that you can see. But I'm using light, sketchy lines. I'm doing a lot of back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Because it doesn't need to be perfect as long as I've got light lines at first. You know, this project and this art and making art in general is all about, you know, revising, refining. So as you'll see in this still life, I'm going to start light and loose, and then I'm going to gradually get more and more controlled. But now that I've drawn these two that intersect to show that overlap or to create that overlap, I'm just going to erase that part where they intersect. And I'll do the same thing for the water bottle. I will draw the whole cylinder of the water bottle as if it disappeared behind. I just realized it's a little too fat. So I'm going to make it a little skinnier. And now the other thing that people were doing is I saw a lot of people drawing cylinders with flat tops on them. It's okay to start with a flat rectangle, but you want to then take that flat top and open it up into a kind of oval. And technically there's an oval at the bottom too, but because it's hidden inside, you'll erase. And then remember, to show overlap, I just want to erase all of the parts where it goes inside the shoebox. And you can see that now it looks like my water bottle is peeking out from behind my shoebox. If anything, I feel like the shoebox is a little too tall. So now, because I've got light lines, I can erase the whole top and just kind of move it down a little bit more. And then move this down a tiny bit more to kind of create all three. And now I think this ball, although I love that it's a perfect circle, it's a little too big because I shrunk the shoebox. So I will shrink the tennis ball, still keeping the overlap. So there you have it. I feel like now that I've got light lines, I can now start to focus on pressing a little harder to kind of draw any sort of inside detail. So in this case, there's like a lid for the box. I'm still not pressing like 100%. I'm still pressing maybe like 50% pressure. The tennis ball has this wavy line. It actually has a second line right next to that wavy line. And then the cylinder is more important. So if you have a bottle, if you have a mug, if you have a can, there's probably going to be some area where it kind of indents a little bit. In this case, I'm going to make sure that these indents are kind of in the same place. And then there's a little curve to kind of support that indent. And then at the top of the bottle, there's almost like another little mini cylinder that sits on the top that kind of becomes the lid. And then there's even a little mini cylinder on top of that that kind of becomes the top of the mouth. And now I'm going to just tweak and revise, but I feel like that's it for this video. The only other thing I can do right now before I start shading, which I'll do in the next video, is just draw the table line. So just like before, the table line goes through, it intersects all of the objects, but I'm going to have it disappear on one end and kind of move across and then peek out on the other end. So if you have a ruler or a straight edge, you can even just use another piece of paper to kind of help guide that, but you want to make sure that it goes in one side and comes out the other side in a straight line. Can be vertical, but we've also looked at some examples in class where it's like a diagonal table. That's fine too. I just have been doing a lot of these. So with that, I'm going to stop the video. If you have any questions, take a picture of your artwork and send it to me and we can go through it during office hours. Otherwise, this next video in the series is going to cover how to use shading to reinforce depth and add volume to this artwork. Hope everybody's safe and well and have a great day.